Couldn't escape me, Dave.
What can I tell you today, Jim, that I didn't tell you 8 hours ago? I'm not sure.
Well, you know what? I'm hoping you tell me some different stuff, to be honest.
Okay, what are we going to talk about?
What is it like playing the same team 4 straight times? I mean, this late in the season, like playing Vancouver 4 straight times.
I'll tell you after the fourth one. I don't know. Not in a regular season, it's obviously different. You've played team 4 straight times in a playoff series, but in a regular season, it's certainly different. But the whole year has been different with no fans and playing the same teams over and over again. So I think by now we're hardened to the fact that things aren't going to be normal, and playing a team 4 times in a row in the regular season is not normal, but that's where we're at.
So how does it change when you're playing a team that looks like they might be out of the playoffs as opposed to a team like Calgary or Montreal or Toronto that are going to be in the playoffs? How does that change?
You know what, Jim? We've got to really concentrate on what we're doing. You understand where Vancouver's at and their situation, but we've got to go into these games making sure we're pushing our game ahead. So we met this morning about our mindset for this week. We've got to make sure that details of our game are in place, and you got to keep working towards making sure your team is playing the best it can down the stretch here. So that's going to be our mindset. We have to work on our game.
Okay, thank you.
Daniel Nugent-Bowman, The Athletic.
Hey, Dave. So in saying that, like you want to get your team firing on all cylinders heading into the postseason here, but you've also gone from a big chunk where you hardly played any games, and now you got a whole bunch of games here. So how are you kind of balancing the rest versus getting your team and firing on all cylinders? How do you kind of balance that at this point of the year?
Well, the games, you got to make sure you have energy to play. So we'll manage our rest with days off, and really we've got limited practice time here. So that's why we want to make sure we use the games. Every game we go into will have a purpose of how we want to play and what we want to do to make sure our game's in order. So it's the preparation. Our preparation right now is to get our team playing as well as we can once, so we can clinch a playoff spot and go into a playoff series playing well. So those are the things that are driving us right now. Not, you understand how well, your question is, can you get enough rest? It's imperative we get enough rest because you want to play well in the playoffs. So you do everything to prepare. That's prepare your game, prepare what you're doing on the ice, but you also prepare with the thought of making sure you're healthy as possible and going into the playoffs, as fresh as possible.
You've been a guy that since you've gotten to Edmonton here, talked about wanting to have pairs in your in your forward lines and find guys that can come in and be the third guy on the line. You jumbled up your lines quite a bit in the last several weeks here. Do you feel like you have your right pairs, or are you still trying to kind of get to that point at this point now?
We've looked at a lot of different things, and there's two sides of it. You're trying to push your team along and see where you can maximize every asset that you have. And we've added young McLeod to our mix here now that we're trying to figure out where the best fit for him is. So we've got some moving parts. There's different factors that come into play with it. One key factor is when we play McDavid and Draisaitl together or play them apart. So there's factors that go into it, but we feel comfortable that there's some players that have played with each other enough that when you put them together, it's you can get into sync pretty quick.
Sure. Thank you.
Mark Spector, Sportsnet.
Dave, your team's played well enough that you've really earned the option to give some guys a night off, right? To give a regular player a night off to, and maybe work in a guy who you might need in case of injury in the playoffs. Does it make sense? Are you a kind of coach that would say a day off on May 6th is going to help and May 25th, or do you just play your regular guys all the way through here?
You know what? I think it is, Beck, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You got to make sure your team is ready. And in saying that, there's some players you want to maybe that haven't played as much lately that you want to get a game or two here and there. But on the other side of it, you got to make sure your team is in sync and in rhythm down the stretch here. So we'll try to manage that as best we can. Some of it will be, there's, as you come through here, you got some bumps and bruises. You might give somebody an extra day to heal up a little bit that you maybe normally wouldn't. We'll manage that as the next 2 weeks go here. But those factors are making sure that our team is prepared the best we can. Some of those factors come into play, and making sure that you get some people with some minutes that maybe haven't got as many, to make sure they're ready. Maybe there's some guys that have played more minutes, they come back a little bit as you get ready. But everything we'll do as a team in preparation of how we play, how much rest we get, making sure we're giving ourselves the best chance to be as good a team as we can be down the stretch and into the playoffs. That's what we're going to do. So
in a normal year, you'd be out there scouting potential playoff opponents. I don't know what happens this year, but there's clearly 2 teams there that you might meet in the first round. How do you approach?
And you played them,
those teams after playing them so often.
And you played them 9 times this year, so no, it's a different year that way. I mean, you know everybody well.
Thanks,
Jim Matheson.
Dave, how will you handle your goaltending with 7 games to go? I mean, obviously Smith is playing 2 out of every 3 games at least, and Mikko's only playing 1. Will you look at it now and say, okay, I got to get Mikko a few more games within the last 7? I just can't ride Mike.
Yeah, I met with Schwartzy this morning. We've kind of sat down and talked about where we want to get to, and we'll make sure that falls into the same category I'm just talking about. We'll make sure both guys are up and ready and get enough rest and enough play that both of them will be ready to go.
And is the fitting guys into the lineup harder for defensemen than it would be for a forward? I mean, you've got 12 forwards, and maybe you've got, maybe Tyler Ennis or somebody like that who's in the tactics squad. When you've got defensemen, there's only 6 spots. You want to get some guys in who haven't maybe played.
The fitting guys in becomes harder because of roster logistics of call-ups, and the forwards are an emergency right now because we have so many injuries. But the roster, that part of it, there's the 4 call-up thing is a factor for us.
And will Kara play this week?
Who's that?
Will Jujar Kara play this week?
I would hope so. Yeah, he's been skating every day with the extra guys, so he's getting closer.
Okay, thank you.
Daniel Inger-Bowman.
Dave, we've talked a lot this morning about this rest versus performance thing, but I'm just curious from a macro level, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know if you how much you follow other sports, but say in basketball and baseball, it's almost like a reward. But in hockey, if you take a guy out of the lineup, it's almost like an indictment of their play or something like that. Do you think that'll ever change in hockey? Do you think we can get to a point where it's almost a good thing to take a guy out and it's not seen as a quote unquote punishment?
Well, I think you've seen that over the years. I've seen a lot of it. There's different teams that have done different parts of it. Years and years ago, Philadelphia used to send Bobby Clark and a couple of guys to Florida for a few days and rest. So it's these athletes, they're so fine-tuned right now that there's a lot of them that wouldn't want the day off. You might go to a guy and say, hey, would you take a day off? They want to keep going. They want to keep in rhythm. So those are all things you have concerns about all the time. But with the way players are right now, I would say the majority of them would rather just keep playing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks for the perspective.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.